All right, looks like former CIA head General David Petraeus got himself in a little trouble. After his sudden resignation over an extramarital affair, we're learning more about the timeline and who knew about it. The FBI and House Majority Leader Eric Cantor reportedly knew of the affair a couple of weeks before the election. Interesting that Petraeus didn't step down then. It's also ironic that the former CIA director resigned just days before he was expected to testify in front of Congress about the attack on our embassy in Benghazi. Instead, Petraeus may now end up testifying to save himself. Congressional members are calling for an investigation into the FBI's investigation of Petraeus. Since when does the FBI investigate a CIA executive? And to top it all off, Hillary Clinton's keeping pretty quiet herself. Joining me again is Brandon Webb, former Navy SEAL and editor-in-chief at SOPREP.com. And I want to bring in Mike Baker, former CIA operative. He's also the president and co-founder of Diligence LLC, a global intelligence and security firm. I'm going to go right to you on that one.
All right.
Why would the FBI be randomly investigating the head of the CIA? This sounds like a movie.
Well, no, it's you know what, it makes perfect sense if you've been involved in counterintelligence operations, and I've been in the middle of a few of them against some of our traders in the past. What they did is the FBI was presented with a potential harassment case by a State Department person. So you've got a government official brings to the Bureau and says, I'm being harassed, and this is a concern. The Bureau deals with it as they would. Now, very quickly in the course of that investigation, which essentially is a forensic investigation of emails, then they discover the nexus with Petraeus and Broadwell. That would have happened very quickly into this investigation that apparently started in the summertime. As soon as they see that Petraeus is involved, the head of the CIA, it just ramps up. It's a major counterintelligence concern at this point. You've got the head of the CIA, you've got someone who's developed close access to that person in an affair. Now, regardless of the fact that this person who had developed the access, Broadwell, is a West Point graduate, it doesn't matter. You've got to treat it as if it's the worst case scenario. So the FBI has that remit. That's their job. I've worked on a number of counterintelligence projects where the Bureau takes that responsibility. And so that part of it makes perfect sense. What then doesn't really make sense, what has a lot of people scratching their heads, is this idea that somehow they just carried out this entire investigation in a bubble, decided not to say anything.
And magically there was no leaks.
There was no leaks. That is the first time this has ever happened in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And they tell James Clapper, the DNI head, supposedly, on Election Day, and then he advises the president the day after election. That's the part that makes no sense. At a certain point during an investigation, and yes, the Bureau would have looked into it early days to figure out what do we have here. But as soon as they identified, again, this problem with Petraeus, they have to sit down, and the director has to say, of the Bureau, has to say, okay, I got to figure out. He would meet with his legal people. He'd say, what are my obligations here in terms of reporting this now? What's the precedent? And the precedent is you kick it upstairs. You know, in part, that's to cover your ass. I don't know if I can say that.
No, you did.
I just did. Yeah. And so for that reason, it would have gone up. And it would have been put on Holder's desk. There's no way.
Well, all right, that's where I'm going to jump in, because okay. Holder, he's not. Fast and Furious kind of disappeared. Now let me do what I do.
Okay.
Saul Alinsky wrote in Rules for Radicals about picking a target, freezing it, and polarizing it. In his chapter on tactics, he tells a story about going after an executive at a company and finding out that the guy was gay. And he writes about how an organizer, a community organizer, is supposed to get as much dirt on this target that he's picking, freezing, and polarizing, and then hold that information till it's most relevant. And he writes with apprehension about doing this to this person, but then he expresses it's a by any means necessary sort of thing. Your friend was killed in Benghazi. Your best friend in the Navy SEALs was killed at Benghazi. It seems like the people who would be standing in front of Congress to tell us exactly what happened, one by one, have reasons to keep their mouths shut. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't like conspiracy theory. Right. But knowing this president's influences and things he has done in the past to people like Jerry Ryan, or Jack Ryan, I should say, this is not beyond his thing. But again, as a former Navy SEAL who lost a friend, this seems like a bad movie.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets worse. I agree with you that Petraeus did the right thing. I think he stood up, and that's something we don't see too often these days. somebody that actually takes accountability for their mistakes, which I think that just goes to show what a great leader Petraeus is. All human beings make mistakes, but it takes guts and leadership to own up for it. The fact that these congressional hearings are going on with the two key people that could actually give us some answers, Clinton and Petraeus, and they're not going to be there, I don't even know why they're having them.
Well, this is where I'll push back. There's all the chatter that's out there about how this might have been an effort to keep Petraeus from going up on the Hill. It's not. It doesn't. To me, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't hold water because he's going up on the Hill. They've got all sorts of precedent to summon him, and when they do, he will go up there and talk. So there's no way in my mind that the reason why this came out is because it was an effort to keep him off. If you're the CIA director, frankly, this is my point of view, you're incredibly anxious to get up on that Hill and talk about the only reason we didn't have more casualties, the only reason we didn't have an ongoing hostage crisis is because what some of the global response guys from the CIA were able to put together in short order on that night of the attack.
Yeah, no support.
Right, with no support.